There is something about the last night of February that has always carried a strange electricity, like the universe itself is exhaling before it turns the page. And this year, on February 28th, moving into March 1st, that exhale is not quiet. It is not subtle. It is the kind of cosmic breath that rearranges things, the kind that you feel in your chest before your mind has had a chance to catch up. I have been watching the sky for a long time, and I want to be honest with you right from the start. What is happening overhead these 2 days is not just a pretty arrangement of lights. It is a conversation. A multi-layered, emotionally loaded, deeply intentional conversation between planets that have been moving toward this moment for months. And the message they are carrying is pointed directly at your life. Let me walk you into this slowly, because rushing through a night like this would be a disservice to what the sky is actually doing. We are sitting at the tail end of a month that has already delivered some of the most significant planetary alignments in decades. Saturn and Neptune completed their historic conjunction at 0 degrees Aries just days ago. And the reverberations of that meeting are still moving through the collective like a shockwave. 0 Aries is not just a degree on a chart. It is the very first breath of the entire zodiac, the point where the personal becomes universal, where the inner world cracks open and bleeds into the outer one. When two planets as weighty and as symbolically opposite as Saturn and Neptune shake hands at that exact coordinate, what gets activated is nothing less than the intersection of dream and reality. Saturn has always been the planet of structure, responsibility, limitation in the best sense of the word because limitation gives things shape. Neptune has always been the planet of dissolution, transcendence, the longing for something beyond what you can hold in your hands. These two forces have been in tension for as long as human beings have been looking up at the sky and asking what their lives are supposed to mean. And now at this singular degree, they are not in tension anymore. They are unified. And that changes everything about the energy we are walking into on February 28th and March 1st. Because right on top of that already seismic backdrop, Mercury is retrograde in Pisces. Mercury stationed retrograde just 2 days ago, and if you have been feeling like your thoughts are moving through water, like conversations are looping back on themselves, like your mind keeps drifting toward the past without your permission, that is exactly why. Mercury retrograde is often misunderstood as just a time of technical glitches and missed messages, and yes, those things happen. But the deeper work of Mercury retrograde, especially in a sign as mystical and emotionally saturated as Pisces, is the retrieval of what has been lost. Ideas you abandoned, words you never spoke, connections that faded before they were finished. Mercury moving backward through Pisces is like someone slowly turning up the volume on a song you had forgotten you loved, and suddenly you cannot believe you ever let it go quiet. And then there is Venus. Venus is also in Pisces right now. And in Pisces, Venus is exalted, which means she is not just present, she is luminous. She is operating at the full depth of her capacity. In any other sign, Venus governs love, beauty, desire, the things we reach for and the things we find worth keeping. But in Pisces, she transcends all of that and becomes something closer to devotion. Not the romantic comedy version of love, but the kind that survives grief, the kind that holds someone through their worst night without needing them to explain it, the kind that does not ask for anything in return because it has already found its home in the act of loving itself. When Mercury retrograde touches Venus, exalted in Pisces, which is exactly what is happening as we move through these 2 days, the effect on the human heart is almost indescribable. The mind becomes tender. The defenses come down. And things you have been careful not to feel for a very long time start rising to the surface. Not as wounds exactly, but as truth. I want you to sit with what that means for a moment, okay? Because this is the emotional center of gravity for February 28th and March 1st. There is a desire inside you. Not the surface level kind that changes with your mood or your circumstances, but a deep, quiet, stubborn desire that has been living in you for years. Maybe you know exactly what it is and you have just been afraid to say it out loud. Maybe life got loud and you lost track of it somewhere along the way. Maybe someone told you it was too much, too impractical, too soft, and over time you started to agree with them, even though some part of you never actually did. Mercury retrograde conjunct Venus in Pisces is the sky's way of saying, not so fast. That thing you set down, that wish you buried under responsibilities and obligations and the noise of everyday life, it did not go anywhere. And these 2 days, it is knocking. Not loudly. Pisces does not knock loudly, but it is persistent and it is patient, and it will find you in the quiet moments, in the space between one thought and the next, in the way your chest tightens when a certain memory surfaces, in the inexplicable sadness that has no obvious cause. Pay attention to all of it, because it is information. Now I want to pull Jupiter into this picture, because Jupiter is doing something that perfectly complements everything I just described. Jupiter is retrograde in Cancer, and in Cancer, Jupiter is in its exaltation as well. Which means we have 2 exalted planets in the sky right now, Venus in Pisces and Jupiter in Cancer. Both operating at their highest frequency, both speaking the language of feeling rather than logic. Jupiter in Cancer is the planet of abundance, expressing itself through emotional intelligence, through the richness of your inner world, through the quality of your relationships and your sense of belonging. When Jupiter is direct in Cancer, the expansion is outward. More connection, more family, more warmth extending into the world. But when Jupiter is retrograde, the direction reverses and the abundance flows inward. You are being asked right now, in these days, to take stock of your emotional wealth. Not your financial situation, though that can be part of it, but the deeper kind of richness. Do you feel nourished by the people in your life? Do you feel at home in your own body, your own mind, your own story? Do the relationships you have invested years into still reflect who you are becoming? Jupiter retrograde in Cancer does not take things away from you. It helps you see what you already have with fresh eyes. And it also helps you see what you have been pouring energy into that is no longer feeding you in return. And then there is Uranus, sitting in the final degrees of Taurus, which is its own kind of punctuation mark. Uranus has been in Taurus for years now. And in that time, it has been systematically dismantling everything we thought we knew about stability, value, and material security. The ground has shifted. The rules have changed. Things that seemed permanent turned out to be temporary, and things that seemed fragile turned out to have more staying power than anyone expected. Uranus in the final degrees of any sign is unpredictable in a very specific way. It is like someone who knows they're about to move out of a house, making one last pass through every room to see if they left anything behind. Whatever Uranus has not yet finished in the realm of material and self-worth is going to announce itself now, sometimes with a jolt, sometimes with a quiet revelation that rearranges your sense of what is possible. Do not assume that the thing which feels fixed in your life right now is actually as fixed as it appears. Uranus always has one more surprise, and on these 2 days it is very much awake. So hold all of this at once for just a moment. Mercury retrograde conjunct Venus in Pisces, softening the mind, opening the heart, pulling forgotten desires back into the light. Saturn conjunct Neptune in Aries, the dream and the structure finally working together, laying the foundation of something real. Jupiter retrograde in Cancer, turning abundance inward and asking what truly nourishes you. Uranus in the final degrees of Taurus, shaking loose whatever still needs to move. This is not a random collection of transits. This is an orchestrated moment, and the theme running through all of it is the same. Your life is asking you to get honest, not performatively honest, not the kind of honesty that sounds good in a journal but never changes anything, but the deep, sometimes uncomfortable, always liberating kind of honesty that requires you to admit what you actually want and to stop pretending that what you have settled for is the same thing. This guy on February 28th and March 1st is not giving you answers. What it is giving you is a rare quality of silence in the noise, a window in which the deeper frequencies of your own life become audible, And in that silence, if you are willing to listen, you will hear something. It might be a memory. It might be a name. It might be the echo of a version of yourself that you left somewhere along the road and have been quietly missing ever since. Whatever it is, do not dismiss it. The cosmos has been building to this moment for months. What surfaces in these 2 days is not accident. It is instruction. Now I want to take you through every sign, because while all of this is happening collectively, it does not land the same way for each of you. The planetary weather is the same for everyone, but where those planets fall in your personal chart determines which area of your life is being activated, which room in the house the universe is knocking on. And I want you to listen for your sun sign, your rising sign, and your moon sign if you know it, because each of those placements will give you a different layer of the picture. Aries, I am starting with you because the center of gravity of this entire alignment lives in your territory. Saturn and Neptune have just united in your first house of self-identity and the face you show the world. The first house is the most personal placement in astrology. It is you. It is the body you walk around in, the energy you project before you even open your mouth. The first impression you make, not just on other people, but on life itself. Saturn conjunct Neptune in your first house is initiating a profound restructuring of your sense of self. The Neptune part of you, the dreamer, the idealist, the part that has always believed in something beyond what is visible, is now being given bones by Saturn. The vision that has lived in you as a vague longing, a feeling of being meant for something but not quite knowing what shape it takes, is being handed a blueprint. This is not a comfortable process. Saturn in your first house never is. There will be moments when the weight of becoming who you are actually supposed to be feels heavier than who you have been pretending to be. But the Mercury and Venus conjunction in your 12th house is working alongside this in a way that is profoundly supportive. The 12th house is the house of the hidden, the unconscious, the sacred interior. Venus and Mercury meeting, there are unlocking something private in you, something you have carried for a long time without fully understanding it. These 2 days, pay close attention to your dreams, your quiet moments, the thoughts that arise in the space between waking and sleeping, because your own unconscious is speaking with unusual clarity right now, and what it has to say is directly relevant to the Saturn-Neptune work of becoming more fully yourself. Taurus, Uranus has been living in your first house for years now, and its presence in the final degrees of your sign means the revolution. It has been conducting in your sense of identity, is reaching a crescendo. You are not the person you were 7 years ago. The values you held, the way you measured your own worth, the definition of security you inherited from your upbringing, all of it has been slowly and sometimes painfully updated. These 2 days, as Uranus participates in the larger alignment from your first house, something about your sense of self might crystallize in a way that feels sudden, even though it has been building for years. The Mercury and Venus conjunction in your 11th house is adding a beautiful layer to this. The 11th house governs your community, your friendships, your vision for the future, the people you want to stand beside as you walk into the next chapter of your life. Venus, exalted in your 11th house, touched by Mercury retrograde, is asking you to look at your social world and notice who has grown with you and who has stayed behind. This is not a question designed to create separation. It is a question designed to create clarity. And clarity in the 11th house ultimately leads to belonging, the real kind, the kind where you do not have to shrink to fit. Gemini, your ruling planet Mercury went retrograde 2 days ago, and it did so in your 10th house of career, public identity, and life direction. When a planet stations retrograde in a house, it concentrates enormous energy there, like water backing up behind a dam. Everything that Mercury governs, communication, information processing, the way you make sense of things is now turned inward and pointed at your professional life. If you have been questioning your direction, if the work you are doing feels misaligned with who you have become, if there is a professional path you stepped away from years ago that has been sitting in the back of your mind ever since, this retrograde is bringing all of it forward. Venus is there with Mercury, and Venus exalted in Pisces, in your 10th house adds a dimension of longing to this process. You are not just analyzing your career, you are feeling it. You are asking not just what makes sense, but what matters. That is an important distinction. Saturn and Neptune in your 11th house are simultaneously restructuring your relationship with your community and your vision for the future. Old alliances that were built on shared ambition but not shared values may naturally dissolve. New connections grounded in something more authentic are forming, and they will become increasingly visible as the year moves forward. Cancer, Jupiter is retrograde in your 1st house, and that alone makes these 2 days enormously significant for you. Having the planet of expansion sitting in the house of self while it moves. Retrograde is like having a profound teacher living inside your own skin, asking you every day whether the story you are telling about yourself is actually true. Jupiter in Cancer in your 1st house is expanding your emotional intelligence and your capacity for self-understanding. But in retrograde, this expansion is not external. It is not about becoming more visible or more successful in the world's eyes. That is about becoming more real to yourself. The Mercury and Venus conjunction in your 9th house is adding fuel to this inner journey. The 9th house governs belief systems, philosophy, the stories we tell about why things happen and what they mean. Venus exalted and Mercury retrograde in your 9th house means old beliefs about love, about worth, about what you deserve are being revisited. Something you were told long ago about your own limitations, something you internalized so deeply you stopped questioning it, is being brought back up for examination. These 2 days, the belief that needs the most compassion is the one that says you have to earn belonging. If you do not, you never did. Jupiter in your 1st house is trying to help you feel that all the way down. Leo, the moon is waxing into your sign during this alignment, and that gives you a particularly expressive quality right now. There is something inside you that is ready to be said. And the question is not whether you have the courage to say it, but whether you have given yourself permission to feel it fully first. Mercury and Venus meeting in your 8th house are doing deep excavation work. The 8th house is the house of transformation, shared resources, psychological depth, and the parts of yourself you do not show at parties. Venus exalted there, touched by Mercury retrograde, is bringing something to the surface from the depths of your own emotional history. A past relationship, a financial dynamic, an intimate wound that never fully healed might be asking for your attention right now. Not so you can relive the pain, but so you can finally understand what it taught you and what it cost you. Jupiter retrograde in your 12th house is simultaneously expanding your spiritual awareness in ways that will not become fully visible until later in the year. Trust what is happening beneath the surface even when you cannot see the shape it is taking. Leo, you are used to shining outward. These 2 days, let yourself shine inward. The radiance that comes from genuine self-understanding is more magnetic than anything you could perform. Virgo, Mercury is your ruling planet, and it has just stationed retrograde in your 7th house of partnerships. One-on-one relationships and the people who hold up a mirror to your truest self. This is one of the most significant Mercury retrograde placements for you personally, because it is turning the lens of your analytical mind toward the most intimate area of your life. Who are you in relationship? What do you give? What do you withhold? What do you need but are afraid to ask for? Venus is there with Mercury, exalted in Pisces, and Venus in your 7th house exalted is perhaps the most beautiful placement for matters of the heart that this alignment could offer you. It is as though love itself is sitting in the most important relationship chair in your chart and asking whether you are ready to receive it fully. Mercury retrograde alongside Venus here means old relationship patterns are returning to consciousness, not to trap you in them, but to give you the awareness to choose differently. Someone from your past may reappear, literally or in memory. A conversation that was left unfinished might find its conclusion. Whatever arises in your closest relationships these 2 days, meet it with curiosity rather than defensiveness. Saturn and Neptune in your 8th house are restructuring the foundations of how you share yourself with others, financially, emotionally, and intimately. What has been murky is clarifying. What has been imbalanced is seeking equilibrium. Libra, Venus is your ruling planet, and right now she is exalted in Pisces, sitting in your sixth house, which governs daily routines, health, work, environment, and the texture of your ordinary days. I know the sixth house does not sound like the most romantic placement for the planet of love. But stay with me, because Venus exalted in your sixth house is doing something genuinely beautiful. It is asking you to bring love into the everyday. Not the grand gesture kind of love, not the love that requires a special occasion, but the love that shows up in how you treat your body, how you structure your time, what you choose to let into your life on a daily basis, and what you are finally willing to let go. Mercury retrograde there with her means you are looking back at your routines and your habits with new eyes. Something about how you have been living your daily life has not been fully honoring you, and this retrograde is making that impossible to ignore. Saturn and Neptune in your seventh house are the more demanding headline for you this year. Your closest relationships are undergoing a foundational shift, and this has been true for several weeks now. What is happening in this alignment is that the emotional truth of that shift, which your sixth house Venus and Mercury conjunction is surfacing, is directly related to the relational restructuring happening in your seventh. Your daily life and your closest partnership are talking to each other. Listen to the conversation. Scorpio, you have always had a relationship with depth that most signs can only approximate. And on these 2 days, that depth is being honored. The Mercury and Venus conjunction is occurring in your fifth house of creativity, joy, pleasure, and the expression of your authentic self. The fifth house is the house of play, which might sound light, but for Scorpio, even play is meaningful. Venus, exalted in your fifth house, touched by Mercury retrograde, is asking you a question that sounds simple, but reaches all the way to the bottom of who you are. When was the last time you created something, expressed something, shared something purely because it brought you joy, with no agenda, no strategy, no calculation of how it would be received? Pisces energy in the fifth house dissolves the need for output to serve a purpose and replaces it with the need for expression to serve the soul. Mercury retrograde here is bringing back an old creative impulse, something you used to love before practicality talked you out of it. Do not dismiss the pull you feel toward it. Jupiter retrograde in your ninth house has been expanding and simultaneously questioning your belief systems. A worldview that once gave you security might feel too small now. That is not disorientation. That is evolution, finding a container large enough to hold who you are becoming. Sagittarius Jupiter is your ruling planet, and it is retrograde in Cancer in your eighth house. This is a placement of profound internal excavation. The eighth house governs the resources you share with others, the debts both financial and emotional, the power dynamics that run beneath the surface of your closest relationships, and the transformational experiences that change you at a cellular level. Jupiter retrograde in your eighth house is asking you to take an honest look at the energetic exchanges in your life. Where are you overextending? Where are you withholding? Where have you allowed a financial or emotional arrangement to persist past the point where it serves you, because renegotiating it felt like too much trouble? These questions are not comfortable, but Jupiter's presence there means the answers will ultimately lead to expansion, not contraction. Meanwhile, Mercury and Venus meeting in your fourth house of home, family, and emotional roots are doing something gentler and equally important. A memory of home, a family dynamic, a sense of belonging that was fractured somewhere in your past is asking for your compassion right now. Not your analysis, not your Sagittarian instinct to philosophize your way past the feeling, but your actual compassion. Something that shaped you needs to be seen before you can move forward from it. Capricorn Saturn is your ruling planet, and it has just moved into Aries, which puts it in your fourth house of home, family, private life, and emotional foundations. Saturn in your fourth house is one of the most demanding but ultimately most rewarding placements it can make, because it requires you to build your inner world with the same integrity you have always brought to your outer accomplishments. The Neptune conjunction there adds a spiritual and sometimes disorienting quality to this process. The structures in your private life that have been held together by sheer willpower or by long-standing patterns that were never really examined. Those structures are being dissolved and rebuilt simultaneously, which can feel like standing on ground that is somehow both solid and fluid at the same time. The Mercury and Venus conjunction in your third house is offering you a way through this that is more approachable. The third house governs communication, your immediate environment, and the conversations you have with the people closest to you in proximity, siblings, neighbors, the people you see regularly. Venus exalted there, with Mercury retrograde, means a conversation is available to you right now that could shift something important. Someone in your immediate world has something to say to you, or you have something to say to them, that neither of you has quite found the words for yet. These 2 days create an opening. Let the words come. Aquarius, a solar eclipse in your sign occurred just days before this alignment, and you are still in the reverberations of that reset. Eclipse energy is rearranging your sense of self and your direction. And the alignment of February 28th and March 1st is adding another pulse to that process. The Mercury and Venus conjunction falls in your second house of values, finances, and self-worth. This is one of the most potent possible placements for this particular conjunction because Venus exalted in Pisces in your second house is asking you to assign value, not just to what you can quantify, but to what you carry inside you that has no price tag. Your empathy, your vision, your capacity to see what others miss, your willingness to hold space for complexity when the world wants simple answers. These are worth something. Mercury retrograde there is bringing back old stories about your financial worth and your personal worth that have been limiting you. Maybe someone in your past communicated directly or indirectly that what you offer is not enough, or that your particular kind of intelligence is not practical enough, or that wanting to be compensated fairly for your gifts is somehow arrogant. Mercury and Venus are here to correct that record. Saturn and Neptune in your third house are changing the architecture of your mind over the coming months. The mental frameworks you have operated from are dissolving and being replaced by something that can hold a larger truth. This is uncomfortable by nature, but it is also an invitation to think thoughts you have never thought before. Pisces, this is your season, and the sky is speaking your language with unusual intensity right now. Mercury and Venus are meeting in your first house of self-identity and the energy you bring into every room. Your first house is being flooded with Piscean energy at its most exalted and most reflective. Old versions of yourself are not haunting you right now. They are visiting. There is an important difference. When an old version of yourself haunts you, it creates shame, regret, the feeling of being stuck. When an old version of yourself visits, it carries a message, a gift, a piece of who you were that you may have discarded prematurely. Mercury retrograde conjunct Venus in your first house is asking you to receive that visit with openness. Maybe you were softer once and life taught you that softness was dangerous. Maybe you were bolder once and failure convinced you to shrink. Whatever you put down along the way, whatever you armored over to survive, it wants to come home. Not to make you vulnerable in a way that hurts you, but to make you whole in a way that finally heals you. Saturn and Neptune completing their conjunction in your second house means your entire relationship with self-worth and material security is being restructured at the deepest level. What you value is changing. What you are willing to accept in exchange for your time and your gifts is changing. Let it change. The Pisces who emerges from this season is not the one who went in, and that is exactly as it should be. We are standing at the threshold of March now, and everything I have described across these 2 days is not a one-time event. It is a beginning. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries that just happened is not a transit you process and move past. It is a foundation that the rest of this year will be built upon. The Mercury-Venus conjunction in Pisces is opening an emotional chapter, not closing one. Jupiter retrograde in Cancer will continue its inward work until it stations direct, and when it does, what has grown in the interior will finally have the room to express itself in the world. Uranus moving toward Gemini means the disruptions that have been happening in the realm of value and material security are about to shift into the realm of communication and ideas, and that transition is going to be one of the defining energetic stories of the year ahead. What I want to leave you with is something simpler than all of that analysis, because astrology at its best is not a system of prediction. It is a language for understanding the quality of time. And the quality of these 2 days, February 28th moving into March 1st, is one of deep interior honesty in service of genuine future building. The universe is not asking you to figure everything out. It is asking you to stop pretending you do not know what you want. You know, somewhere beneath the noise and the obligations and the very reasonable fear that wanting something real means risking something real. You know exactly what your life is asking of you. That knowledge is not a burden. It is a compass. And right now, the sky is amplifying it just enough that you might finally let yourself hear it. If something in this video stirred something in you, I genuinely want to know about it. Not a surface level response, but your actual experience. What came up? What memory surfaced when your sign came through? What is the desire that you have been too careful to name out loud? Drop it in the comments, because the conversations that happen there are as important to me as the videos themselves. This community is built on real exchange, and I take that seriously. If you are new here and something about the way I talked about all of this felt different from what you expected, welcome. This is a space where astrology is treated as a genuine tool for self-understanding, not a performance. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because what is coming in March builds directly on the foundation we just explored together tonight. The sky has more to say. So do we.